Nothing has happened. Nothing. Ever since Ray's world disappeared, nothing had happened. And that unnerved him. Life for them wasn't supposed to be so stagnant. At least not for them. Not with the plans that the Creator had for them. So why? Why wasn't anything happening? Why couldn't he use his powers? Why couldn't he locate Ray again after her world was gone? Surely the Creator would have already brought Ray into their new world by now, right? But then again, the world hasn't been created yet. It was in the process of being created. And he was stuck waiting for it. Waiting for the beginning. Ever since he came back that first day after he last saw Ray, he's been tensed. He's never experienced something like this before, so of course he would be on edge. But what unnerved him more was the waiting. He didn't know how long it would take. He didn't know if it would ever end. It irritated him. All they've been doing was laze around. At least he wasn't alone. Goldie was here, though she's been quiet for the most part. She would mostly flip through her blank book looking at something only she herself could see. He didn't bother asking her about it. There was a high chance that she wouldn't even give him a straight answer. While Goldie was solemn and quiet, he himself was annoyingly energetic and very, very active. Those characteristics would have been pretty handy for what the Creator had in store for them, for when there was action. But they were also a big hindrance for when a waiting period happened, like the one they were experiencing right now. He guessed that that's why the Creator hasn't gotten tired of Goldie. Aside from her character being able to change and adapt to every world she had entered, she was patient. Patient enough to deal with the periods between every world the Creator had created in the past. Back when she was the only self-aware creation, back before Seventh Self was made. But now he was here, and somehow, he too was connected to the Creator. He was like how Goldie was, but he wasn't as powerful. Maybe the reason why was because while Goldie was always human-like, Sev himself wasn't. The last world, his world, according to Goldie, was one of the Creator's favorites. Goldie was never a main character of any of the Creator's previous worlds, while Sev himself was not only a main character, but he played a big part in it too. He was one of the few gods that the Creator had ever made, the youngest. Maybe the reason why his connection with the Creator was so weak was because he was so powerful in his previous world. Like he was given a handicap to prevent him from being too powerful in this new world. Oddly enough, well, currently at least, that didn't bother him. But what did bother him was that Goldie herself had lost her connection with the Creator. She went from being one of the most powerful and influential characters to a below average one. She lost her one and only power. The only thing she seemed to have now was her memories. Sev wasn't sure if that was a good idea or not. Only time would tell. But for now, her having her previous memories was the only thing that kept him entertained. Goldie wasn't a good storyteller, far from it. Yet, The worlds she had described and been through had made up for her lack of word bending. There were times where he wished he was made back when the creator was young, back when logic was unknown and when negativity and realism didn't affect the creator's creativity. But, oh well. Quite a few times when Goldie wasn't in the mood for storytelling, Seth would try to explore the world. That too was boring. In his eyes, the world was shades of gray. All the faceless human-shaped inhabitants were going about their lives in agonizingly slow motion. He couldn't teleport anywhere, and boy did he hate walking. Any object he touched or moved reacted in peculiar ways. Sometimes the object would be so light that it floated away when released, only to disperse into glittering fragments. Other times, object would give away and mold under his strength like clay. Sometimes, the objects would react bizarrely, but mostly, his form would just phase through the object like it was a mere hologram. He's long giving up on interacting with any of the living. Nothing he did would affect them. If he pushed or shoved, they would still move without any interruption, like they were unmovable machines. Anything edible was disappointingly bland. He never thought that he missed food, but there he would be, trying to eat everything and anything. If he was lucky, he'd maybe feel the texture that the food would have. If he wasn't, his teeth would clank together and the food would disperse or fall through his hands. Seth found that he also missed music and sound in general. The world wasn't silent, but everything was muffled and dragged out like in slow motion, probably to go along with the slow and bleak theme that was the world. After a while of being alone, he would get this dark and upsetting feeling, and soon, the feeling would turn into desperation. He would find himself running aimlessly until eventually, his hand would slap onto a door and he burst into a room. And there Goldie would be. She jumped at his sudden entrance and glared at him for a few seconds before she was able to see the state he was in. And then her glare would soften, and she would beckon him over to her. Goldie was used to this. She was used to the pre-waiting period every time a new world was in the process of being created. She supposed that with all the experience she's had, that she'd grown quite used and numb to many things, especially waiting. But she also knew how maddening it could be when one was new to it. The shorter the waiting period was, the better, and the longer it was, the worse the toll would take. She was thankfully blessed that her first few waiting periods were very short. To Goldie, Seth was extremely annoying. Yet, in a way, she supposed that he was like a younger brother to her. She's never met another character that was as self-aware as she, and now they were both stuck together. It seemed that, without saying, that she would be his guide to this new world, and that didn't bother her one bit. All that said and done, she didn't mind when he would kneel next to her and let her pet him like he was a child. They were practically the only two in this world, so of course he would come running and seek comfort from her. She understood what he was going through, seeing that she herself went through the same thing before. At least Seth had her for company. During his episodes, he would sometimes be shaking. Other times he would sob like a child. During those times, she would try to the best of her ability to comfort him. It was during another one of these episodes that something cut her off in the middle of one of her stories. They both felt it. One moment the world was slow and gray, and the next, everything was suddenly set into motion. The world was suddenly solid and bright. Time resumed like normal. Sounds were clear, color was back, and the world was alive again. The two of them were frozen from the shock of the sudden change. They were still as their minds slowly processed the change. How long were they in that limbo? Apparently too long. Sev sat straight up and they both stared out the window onto the living world. Birds were chirping. Two people were arguing over a minor dispute, and children were playing on the street. Goldie gave a strange sigh of relief, and Sev stood to his full height and gave a sudden cry of relief, startling the residents outside. He picked up Goldie and swung her around in circles from how happy he was, still howling and cheering. Goldie couldn't help herself. His excitement was infectious, so she ended up laughing a bit too. After they started coming down from their high, Sev had set her down, holding her shoulders, and they both just looked at each other. Goldie had a tired grin, yet pure happiness shone from her eyes, and Sev was laughing like a child, his face holding nothing but glee. But then, his smile slowly started to fade into one of confusion, and he turned his head to look out the window once again, which, in turn, made Goldie lose her grin and stare at him. Her eyes flicked from his expression to outside, and then back again. She didn't notice anything unsettling outside, yet why was Sev curling his giant form over her like a shield? What was wrong? After a few more times of looking back and forth, she finally spoke. "Sev, are you okay?" He didn't answer for a while, his suddenly serious face scanning over the horizons. But eventually, he did reply back. "I don't know. Something feels wrong. I don't like it." Goldie's eyes furrowed as she sharply looked outside, trying to find what was wrong. Sev was currently the only one who could feel the creator, so if he had a bad feeling, it usually meant something bad would happen. And so there they stood, huddled together while they tried to find any flaws in this new world. A long while had passed, and yet they still looked. Nothing moved an inch, aside from regular life, that is. And then it happened. In the span of a few seconds, the world ended just as it begun. They were both suddenly thrown to the ground as a force blew the window in. Glass shattered over them, and the once bright world grew dark as the ground shook. The buildings started to break down from the trauma. Objects crashed to the ground, breaking into more pieces that flew everywhere. People were screaming. Some cowered into nooks and crannies while others tried to run on shaky legs. Goldie stared out into the chaos. It was strange. Any other world she had went to before never changed this quick so soon after it just started. Sev caught Goldie's attention when she realized that he was curled on the ground, cursing underneath his breath as he hid his head beneath his thin arms. She squinted at him. "Now what?" she asked him, her voice wobbly from how the floor shook them. Sev looked at her with panicked eyes. I don't understand. This wasn't supposed to happen. Why?" Sev looked just as lost as everybody else. It took Goldie a moment to understand what was going on. Though Sev could feel the creator's thought process, he would be unaware of any new last-minute changes. Those were unplanned, unforeseeable, and also unpredictable. Now that she realized that that's exactly what was going on, she could feel herself start to relax despite the violent environment that was around them. She laid on her back and decided to wait it out. Her arms went behind her head to cushion it. Sev looked at her in disbelief. His form tensed, like an animal backed into a corner. Why did Goldie suddenly seem so calm? Before he could muster up his question, Goldie cut him off. "Don't worry, it'll be over soon," she assured him. The still shaking ground now felt sort of soothing, if one could ignore the panicked screams outside. He stared at Goldie, but eventually, he grabbed onto the fabric on her arm and tried to keep control of his rising panic as he waited out the unpredictable event. Goldie? Seth's face was deadpan as he found himself sitting on top of a jungle gym. A melting cherry pop was dripping down his hand. Goldie was sitting next to him enjoying her own popsicle as she stared out onto the scenery. Yeah? She responded. Seth tilted his head and tried to make sense of what just happened. We were in the middle of a natural disaster. Yes. Transported to a random place. Yes. I'm pretty sure we're not anywhere near where we were before. Yes. We're eating ice cream on a playground. Delicious ice cream. And the city's on fire. A moment of silence passed before Seth continued. He lifted the half-melted ice cream. Doesn't this seem a bit too much? Too random and a bit pointless? He questioned. Goldie paused as she considered the situations. Well, I don't really care for this pool. Seth blinked as Goldie turned to him, having finished her ice cream. She flicked the wooden stick to the ground below. When she caught sight of Seth, she raised a brow. Looks like you don't get to keep your human form then. Seth looked down at his body. She was right, he supposed. While they were in a waiting period, his default form was human-like. But now that the world had technically started, he found himself unable to look human again. He sighed, feeling exhausted from all the emotion he had felt in such a short amount of time. Instead of asking questions that Goldie probably wouldn't really bother to answer, Seth just decided to accept whatever this was. Before, the creator seemed to have had a very clear idea on what she wanted to do with this pre-planned world, but now that the world did begin, Seth was at a loss on what to expect now. He sighed as he looked back up onto the new world. So, what now? He asked Goldie, the now completely melted popsicle all over his large hand. He tried flicking the liquid off his hand, but when that didn't work, he ended up trying to lick it off instead. Goldie chuckled, watching him as she considered their options. Well, I suppose since plans had changed, we'll just live until the creator decides to screw us over again. She chuckled at the dark humor. Her smile seemed a bit strained. Seth grumbled at that. What? No! Why? He whined. It seemed that he didn't like surprises by much. Especially this one. At his complaint, Goldie's smile turned more genuine. Come on. I'm pretty sure that the creator wouldn't make this world without a few exciting things going on. Once things calm down, we should explore a bit. Seth glared at Goldie, though the glare wasn't all that menacing since his tongue was still out and his cheeks were puffed up from him pouting. Goldie rolled her eyes. She had to think of something to get him to move, otherwise he would be stuck on the playground for a very long time before he even decides to make any effort of doing any progress. Hey, aren't you fond of Ray? Now that the world started, we might be able to find her. Hell, she's probably in that city right now. At this, Seth flicked his tongue back into his mouth and he grinned. His mood instantly brightened. Hey, yeah! He jumped off the jungle gym and fist bumped the air. Let's go find Queenie! He pointed onto the city. Onwards, my friend! We got shit to drive people and people's lives to ruin. He started to walk towards the wreckage, a determined stride in his step. Goldie followed behind at a slower pace, watching him with an amused smirk. It seemed that he had quickly recovered from the previous drama. That was a good thing in her book. At the first intersection, she stopped in the middle of the streets. She looked at the chaos still going on. Seth was here and there looking excitedly around the rubble and passing people who would scream at the shock of his appearance. He didn't seem to notice being too preoccupied in looking for his friend. A sort of energy was crackling in the air, pre-telling of many things to come. She ran a hand through her hair. Her eyes looked to the sky. A feeling would come that of when one would make eye contact with another. She gave an annoyed look. Okay, creator. We're here now. Alive and breathing. Let's see if you can surprise us with these new ideas you got." Goldie smirked, challenging the unseeable force she was talking to.